I always feel that in order for you to make the right decision on your health, you have to really be educated. Because there's so many things out there on the internet, so many things from various doctors being told, and it gets confusing for someone that may not understand health. So I'm putting these talks together for the community so we can educate the community and get more people understanding what good health is about and how to become the healthiest you can be. So that's why I put these talks together. We're going to do 24 throughout the entire year. This is the first one. And we're calling today's topic, the best kept secret to optimal health. I felt that was the best way to start off the talks because it gives a good synopsis of the current healthcare system and how the mentality needs to change in order to become healthier. And we're going to go over all of that today. So, the best kept secret to optimal health. So, what's on the agenda for tonight? I always like to start off the talks kind of giving some goals of what I want to get for the rest of the night so we all are on the same page. So my goal by the end of tonight is to do a few things. Number one is to increase your understanding of the current healthcare system. Number two, I want to educate you on the potential dangers of the current healthcare system. I want to teach you the importance of the nervous system and how that affects your overall health. And lastly, I want to make health fun. Do we have a deal here?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I do want to put a disclaimer out there. I may talk about things you've either never heard before or something that may test your knowledge of health. And I just ask that you have an open mind about it. I'm not trying to push anybody's buttons. It's just I may talk about things you've never heard before. And that's the whole point of this, to educate you. So we have to talk about the U.S. healthcare system. We can all agree that we have the most extensive healthcare system in the United States. I'm sorry, in the world, not in the United States. We have the best doctors, the best medical schools, the best hospitals, and we have the most technology and research out of any country in the world. We even spend the most money out of any country in the world. In fact, last year, there was $2 trillion that was spent on healthcare. So, oh.
I couldn't find it.
That's okay. You're not the only one that can. All right. So all you missed was the introduction. We're talking about the healthcare system, and we're talking about what the current healthcare system is all about. And last year we spent $2 trillion. Caught up?
Yes.
So what are you getting for those $2 trillion? You're getting what we call emergency care, trauma care, or crisis care. When it comes to this type of care, the United States by far is the best healthcare for these types of problems. There's a but, and we got a dot. But crisis and emergency health problems account for less than 1% of all healthcare problems. So the question is, how does our healthcare system stand at handling the other 99%? If 1% is crisis and 99% is non-crisis or just healthcare changes, or health changes, how are we doing that? According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, the United States ranks 79th out of 81 in all industrialized countries in the total health index. And the total health index includes heart disease, cancer, diabetes, infectious diseases, autoimmune conditions, and iatrogenic diseases, which iatrogenic diseases are just diseases that unfortunately occurred from something that the physician did, whether it was a wrongful medication, whether it was a wrongful surgery, something like that. So that's not good. If we're spending trillions of dollars a year, we have the best equipment, we have the best doctors, why are we so low on the industrialized countries? There's something missing, something that's not been talked about. So what has gone wrong? Why are our health costs shooting through the roof, yet our health overall is declining? something's missing. We need to discover it. The problem lies in our model of the healthcare. In other words, what are your beliefs about what health is and what we need to do to achieve that? That's where the problem lies. Because we have an underlying idea of what health is about, and we're going to learn that that's actually not the right way to think about our health. Our present model of quote-unquote health defines by a person and how they feel, whether they have a symptom or not. So most people out there think that, well, if I don't have a symptom and I'm not feeling sick, then I'm healthy, which unfortunately is not true. You can feel like you're 100%, yet you can have something going on, and heart disease is the perfect example. I don't want to bring up, negative stuff, but one of the first symptoms of the heart disease is usually the heart attack that kills the person. So when you go based on feeling or how you feel, it's not the best way to judge your health, and that's really where the switch needs to happen. That means that the objective now becomes about eliminating that symptom. So now we're thinking about only symptoms, and then when we have a symptom, we have to think about what can I do to eliminate the symptom? And that's not really what healthcare is all about. That still goes back to that symptom care or that crisis care. We don't want to have that mentality. So what is the problem with this model and its objective? So let's think about a dentist. We've all gone to the dentist at some point in our life, some of us sooner than most people. But when you have a cavity, it becomes painful eventually. So you have this pain, and you say to yourself, all right, I'm having this pain in my tooth, I got to go to the dentist and get checked out. You don't know you have a cavity, but when you go to the dentist, they check your mouth and like, oh my God, you have 5 cavities. Now the question is, did the symptom come out of the blue, or did the symptom come from years of decay, and finally the symptom came? And that's kind of similar to what we think about our health. We wait and wait and wait and wait and wait until the symptom occurs, and then when the symptom occurs, we think about what do we do to fix it. But that's not the mentality we want to have. We want to prevent all of that from occurring. We don't want to we don't want to end up decaying our spine or decaying our health until it gets to a point where the body now gives up and starts to show symptoms. So, and also, if we look at the definition of healthcare, there's not one medical or science textbook or any encyclopedia in the world that defines health based on a symptom or how a person feels. So I don't know where this mentality came from, but even the medical dictionaries, if we look at Dorland's Medical Dictionary, which is one of the most popular medical dictionaries out there, it defines health as a condition of optimal physical, social, mental, and spiritual well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So even in the dictionary, it says it's not about your symptom, but something out there taught the society that if we have a symptom, we're sick. If we don't, we're fine. Let's even go to Webster's Medical Dictionary. It's another medical dictionary. It defines health as the state of being sound in body or mind, and not simply freedom from physical disease or pain. So again, another health dictionary that defines health not based on a symptom. And unfortunately, most people think that way, and that's what's keeping us so unhealthy compared to the rising healthcare costs. So health is optimal function times the innate wisdom. So the innate wisdom is our body's ability to heal itself. That's, we call it innate. It's just inside of us. If you cut yourself, you physically don't know how to heal it, but your body does. And so optimal function is a variable, and innate wisdom is a constant. You can't change the innate wisdom to heal, but you can change the other variables. And, let's talk about this man right here. Anybody know who this guy is?
Billy Joe.
Yeah, Mr. New Jersey himself. I think we could all agree that he could probably play any song that he does in his sleep, correct? He's got the innate ability to play what he wants to play. He could probably do it with his eyes closed, he probably doesn't have to look at the piano, anything like that. But let's say he goes to a performance, and now he has a piano that wasn't tuned correctly. It's way off key, it doesn't have the right keys, that are tuned in the right way. So now, no matter how great he is at playing this song, no matter how great the body is at healing itself, if it doesn't have the right sound it's supposed to have, or the body's not functioning the way it's supposed to, it can't heal, and he can't play his music. So it just shows that you can make that function is a variable. You can change that function. You can make that piano sound horrible, which is in turn going to make him sound horrible. But it's kind of like how your health is. You have this innate ability to heal. It's just part of the way we are. But all of these toxic things that we do to us, the toxic foods we're putting in us, the lack of activity that we have, all of those things can interfere and block the way that our body functions, and now we're going to express a different way of health. And it's going to be in the worst fashion rather than the better fashion, unfortunately. Let's talk about medications. This is another issue, and we're going to have to bring this up. It's the big elephant in the room. But the United States is the most medicated country in the world. We consume 68% of all of the drugs in the world. Half of all Americans take at least one prescription drug on a daily basis. And in constant dollars, Americans spend more than $234 billion on prescription drugs in 2009, and up to $104.6 billion in 1999. So that's almost double the amount. So this isn't going anywhere. We're not decreasing the amount of medication. We're increasing the amount of medication. And the problem is, what does medication do? It blocks that symptom. So once again, it brings it back to that point of caring about a symptom rather than caring about your body as a whole. So now we have this mentality that we need to take a medication when we have a symptom, and that's, once again, crisis care. That's not health care. The pharmaceutical industry is the most profitable industry in the world, and therefore directly influences healthcare policy. There's definitely a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say conspiracy. Let's use, they're all in cahoots. The pharmaceutical company, the healthcare policy makers are all in cahoots because they're all making money from this. So they're all going to tell you, this drug is good for you, this drug is good for you, because they want to make money. Unfortunately, it's not addressing health, it's addressing a symptom. And once you get out of that mentality, we can really move forward and bring your health to the best possible it can be. 80% of the average pharmaceutical industry budget is used for marketing only. What does that say about healthcare? Why do they have to market it so much if it's the best thing that we've ever had? So it just shows their agenda. And then this is even more surprising. The combined profits for the 10 drug companies in the Fortune 500, 500 companies, were more than the profits for all other 490 businesses put together. So we have the 10 pharmaceutical companies making more than the rest of the entire companies. That's pretty astounding. And it just, again, it brings it back to that, what's their motive? Is their motive to get you healthier, or is their motive to get you to spend money and make money? And that comes from the New England Journal of Medicine, so that's not something we're making up. So do you think big business influences healthcare? More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. It's kind of funny, that one. But it's true. There's more ads out there for this drug and this drug. And then the funny part is, if you think about their commercials, let's just say a commercial for a drug, if you listen to that commercial, it could be a 1-minute commercial, 45 seconds of it is talking about the side effects. So it's like, they're more concerned about what's going to happen to you than what's good is going to happen to you. So what's our secret? We talk about the best kept secret to optimal health. This is where it comes. This is the breaking point of, do you want to have that mentality of, I have a symptom, I'm sick, I don't have a symptom, I'm healthy, or do you want to go towards a different direction. And this is where that turning road is. Do you want to go to the right or left? You go to the right, you're going towards where everybody else is going. Go to the left, you might join a healthier group of people. And that's the chiropractic lifestyle of balance in all areas of your life. So we want to look at every area of your life. We're going to look at the physical aspect. That's your weight, that's your spine. That's, physically, how is your health in the physical fashion. We want to look at chemically or metabolically, what are you putting in your body? They say garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting garbage in your body, you're going to have garbage health coming out. It's a matter of, the law of attraction there. And also we want to look at emotional health. The way we think has a lot to do with our health. If we're always negative and we're always going to have these thoughts that, we can't do this and we won't do that and I can't eat these foods because they're not good for you, right? All this stuff, you're never going to go in that direction towards positive health. And emotional health has a lot to do with your overall health. So let's talk about chiropractic. That's one of the biggest, things for your physical health. And it's a little animation, kind of cute. So what is chiropractic and why is it so important? When you talk about chiropractic, there's three things that we focus on. There's a science of there's a philosophy of chiropractic, which got cut off. I'm sorry. There's a science of chiropractic, and there's an art of chiropractic. And we're going to slowly go through that through the rest of this talk. So what's the chiropractic philosophy? Number one, we talked about it earlier, we have this innate ability to heal itself. Your body is self-healing, whether you want to believe it or not. And that system that allows you to heal is called your nervous system. Your nervous system controls all functions of your body. It has everything to do with your thoughts. It has everything to do with the way you move. It has everything to do with breathing. It has everything to do with your heart rate, your blood pressure. All of that is under control of the nervous system. We have a nervous system that's extremely important, so the body equipped itself with a protective barrier, which is your spine and your skull. Your skull protects your brain, the spine protects your nervous system. So it's so important, it's the only system in the body encased in bone. Now, changes in the structure of your spine, we start to have bad posture, or the change in the way that we stand or the way we move is going to affect the way the nervous system functions, because it protects that, but in turn, if it doesn't have the right position, it could interfere with that. And when we have changes in that function, it manifests in our body in four major ways. One of them is an abnormal sensation. That could be your body's in pain. That could be that you have a numbness in your leg or your foot. That could be that you have this weird feeling that's not normally there. That's an abnormal sensation. You can also have an abnormal movement pattern, and they also call it a motor pattern. That could be, the way you walk, the way you move. It's not normal, or it's not the way that a normal person would walk. So, balance disorders is an example of that. If you feel dizzy all the time, or you feel like you can't, walk in a straight line, that's all indications that the nervous system is not working correctly. The third one is abnormal thoughts. I just talked about how much the emotional person is affected. That an abnormal thought could be somebody that is depressed. An abnormal thought could be somebody that has ADD. An abnormal thought could be somebody that has OCD. The OCD is obsessive compulsive. They always have to do the same thing over and over again, or they can't get through. Those are abnormal thoughts. That's a signal from the nervous system that something's going on. And then lastly, we have abnormal posture. One of the biggest indicators of changes in your nervous system is posture, the way you stand. It's ideal to have an upright posture rather than walking around like this. A person walking around like this does not have good posture, and that's a signal from the body that they also probably, if you look at their health, they probably have a ton of different health symptoms as well. So it's a really big, posture is a very big one, and we focus on that a lot in our office. So, and this is not something chiropractors made up. This is right out of Gray's Anatomy, which is one of the biggest anatomy books out there. It says every function of the human body is under the control of the nervous system. Its function is to coordinate all of the other organs and structures and to relate the individual to his environment. Gray's Anatomy, that's one of the biggest books out there. Now we have the healing brain. To understand health is to understand the central role of the brain and nervous system in maintaining the resistance of the body. Health maintenance is the primary function of the brain, not educational thoughts, language, poetry, and other functions usually associated with the brain. Pretty powerful stuff. Another one. The quality of healing is directly proportional to the functional capability of the central nervous system to send and receive nerve messages. And these are all medical doctors talking about this. This is not a chiropractic thought. The central nervous system is protected by the hardest bones in the body, the skull and the spinal vertebra. The spinal vertebra. Consider it. So we have a cervical spine, we have a thoracic spine, we have a lumbar spine, and we have a sacrum. And the coccyx is the last bone connected to the sacrum. So we have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar vertebrae, and the sacrum is actually fused by the time you're an adult. So we don't really talk about how many are there. And the way that the structure of the spine looks is there should be a curve that goes backwards in the cervical spine, forwards in the thoracic spine, and backwards in the lumbar spine. That's the way the spine was made to allow our body to move correctly, allow our body to withstand the stress of gravity. So when you have the perfect, quote-unquote, perfect structured spine, your body functions correctly. When you start to lose those postures, when you start to change the way that you stand, you're changing the way your body adapts to its world around you. You know, you're changing the way that gravity affects the spine. Now gravity is affecting the spine and it's going to cause more damage in the long run rather than allowing it to adapt to it. Because the more you're going to come forward, the more the gravity is going to enforce that to come forward more. And that's how you could develop things such as degeneration or arthritis in the future. So chiropractors talk about, and this is a health thing really, but chiropractors really focus on the vertebral subluxation. What's the vertebral subluxation? That is when there's an abnormal alignment of the vertebrae that puts an abnormal stress on the nervous system in that area. So you look here, this could be considered a healthy spine. You have a curve that's going backwards. All the discs, which are black right there, they all have the same spacing. All the vertebrae have the same shape. That's the ideal spine. If the second picture you're looking at, you can tell their head is forward. They don't have that curve. The discs aren't looking the same shape. Even the vertebrae are starting to look like they're changing shape. That's what we call degeneration. And over time, when you have a subluxation, which what it would look like, you can have changes in spinal structure and you can have changes in nervous system function. So, subluxation, posture, and health. Posture and normal physiology are interrelated. Posture affects and moderates every physiological function from breathing to hormonal production. And abnormal posture is evident in patients with most chronic and stress-related illnesses. Homeostasis, which is the body's ability to keep a balance in the body, and the nervous system function are ultimately connected to posture. Despite the considerable evidence that posture affects physiology and function, the significant influence of posture on health is not addressed by most physicians. That's really the big secret, quote-unquote, between chiropractic and the medical world. Is the medical world, they don't talk about this. Chiropractic hones in on this and is one of the biggest reasons why we see such strong results. Is we're looking at that source of the problem, that abnormal posture, that abnormal spinal alignment. And that all comes from the American Journal of Pain Management. So that's not a chiropractor that said that. So we talk about posture. So that's not supposed to be there. Sorry about that. Or whatever. So when we talk about posture, we need to understand what normal is. Because in order to understand what abnormal is, we have to talk about what normal is. So you look at posture from the front view and from the side view. So when you look at posture from the front view, you want to have alignment of the shoulders and the hips and the ears also. So you're going to basically pretend there's a line going straight down the middle of a person's body. You want to see that shoulders are even, hips are even, feet are both facing forward, arms are at their side, and that their head is straight. Does this look normal? Or does that look normal? Which one looks more normal? Exactly. So it's not a science, and you don't need a doctor to figure out how posture is bad. So good posture is straight up, bad posture from the front would be a tilt in the shoulders, could be a tilt in the hips, it could be a tilt in the head, you could also rotate. So there's a lot of things you could look at, but when you look at somebody and they don't look like they're standing straight, that's an indication that they are having spinal stress and they could potentially be having some symptoms that they may not address or they may not even know about or are coming in. Then when you look at the side view, the middle of the ear should be lined up with the middle of the shoulder. The middle of the shoulder should be lined up with the middle of the hips. The middle of the hips should be lined up with the middle of the knee. And the middle of the knee should be lined up with the middle of the ankle. That would be ideal. So standing like this is right. Standing like this is not right. So that's really, when you see that, you understand. And if you think about friends or family that walk around like that, they may be somebody that could benefit from the type of care that we give. You know, and they probably have more symptoms than just abnormal posture. And that might be something, you know, you can ask them. You know, do you ever have a headache, or do you ever have pain in the shoulders, or do you ever have a migraine? Those things start to come along when you start to see people with abnormal posture. So how do you get these abnormal postures? How do you get these, you know, subluxations that we talk about? I'm going to put up some pictures. Let me see if you recognize anything. Anybody know that could probably do that, the way that they drive? That would put an abnormal stress on the neck. Bicycle, bend it over like that. That's not the most ideal posture for somebody. And how many people, you know, bike for leisure? You know, but if they're staying like that every day, they're putting stress on their spine. And if they're not addressing the spine, they're actually damaging their health in the long run rather than promoting it. The way we pick up things, you know, most people don't understand the right way to pick up things. You know, you want to pick up something with your legs and your spine, not just with the spine. So that's something that you might want to think about. This is a big one, I bet, for a lot of people. The way they, you know, they read in bed, but then they prop up their head on the 15 pillows, you know, so they get sick. And that's only going to promote that forward posture, which in the long term is going to be damaging. Even the way you sit at your desk, that could cause, you know, abnormal postures, that could cause subluxation. You know, the most ideal position for a desk and the way you sit at it would to have, like, this person has their screen low. If this was up higher, so the middle of the screen being at a high level, that would pick up their head and they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't have their head forward like that. But how many people really look at their desk like that and say, I want to make sure that I'm sitting in the most ideal position? About talking on the phone. Answer a phone call at the desk at work, or answer a phone call at home. You know, how many people, you know, sit there like this for 2 hours while they're on the phone? That's going to change the way your body and the spine is as well. And then you get tired at night and you want to watch TV, and now you're propping yourself in a position like that. So any of these things could cause subluxation. The thing is, every single person out there does this, whether they, you know, try to avoid it or not. So anybody out there can be suffering from these subluxations and they don't even know, because they're waiting for that symptom to occur. But you can have this stuff going on without any symptoms. Subluxation and neurological function. When the central nervous system cannot send and receive messages to and from the muscles, organs, glands, and tissues because of vertebral subluxation, the function and healing potential is reduced. That's a fact. our subluxation is always evident by pain or symptoms, and I have a diagram that is going to help us explain that. So we have a nervous system. We have a nerve. We have a neuron, or the nerves that go to the rest of the body. They have what's called a motor nerve, an autonomic nerve, and a sensory nerve. If you look at the distribution there, the sensory nerve is about that big, and the motor nerves and autonomic nerves are about that big. So it just shows that there's not much pain receptors, but there's a lot of other things doing things about posture and movement, and other things about, autonomic nerves are the nerves that allow us to digest and do things that we don't want to think about. We don't want to think about pumping our heart, but our autonomic nerves do that. We don't want to think about digesting our food. The autonomic nerves help with that. So, and they say, in the entire nervous system, guess what percent of the nervous system detects pain? Let's guess.
100%. 5%.
10%. So 10% of the nervous system detects pain. What do you think the other 90% is doing? It's controlling every other aspect of you. It's controlling your posture. It's controlling your organs. It's controlling your thoughts. It's controlling everything else. Pain is like this much to the nervous system. But we gauge so much of our health on pain and symptom. So it just shows how much. So vertebral subluxations, that's been researched even in the medical world. This is Dr. Lee from the Academy of Pain Research. Hyperfunction or hypofunction, which means high or low function of the neurons along a neuronal chain prevent normal nerve transmission, causing disturbances in homeostasis or the balance of cells, tissues, and organs. Subluxations of vertebra occur in all parts of the spine and in all degrees. When the dislocation or subluxation is so slight as to not affect the spinal cord, it will still produce disturbances in the spinal nerves passing along the foramen. So that's Dr. Woodersee, who's a neurosurgeon. So not a chiropractor. And subluxation is very real. We have documented it to the extent that no one can dispute it. Vertebral subluxations change the entire health of the body by causing structural dysfunction of the spine and nerve interference. The weight of a quarter of a spinal nerve will reduce the nerve transmission by as much as 60%. So very, very, very minor changes in the nerve cell can change so much, yet you don't have to necessarily have that symptom. So you can have 60% loss of function and not even really realize it. The beginning of the disease process begins with postural distortion. That's one of the biggest and first signs. So I have a little bit of a video to show what happens over time if we don't care about our spine and nervous system. So this is ideal posture, but if you see here, over time, if we don't care for our spine, we start to slouch forward. And then we don't take care of it anymore, and we just keep going forward, and you could see how many people walk around like that when they're 80, 90 years old. Some people even walk around like that when they're 60 years old. It all depends on how bad it takes, but the thing is, who's talking about this? Because your medical doctor's not talking about it. And that's where chiropractic is so strong. That's where, we really want to hone in on not just worrying about that symptom. You really want to take care of the spine and the nervous system as a whole, because when you take care of the spine and nervous system, your whole body works more efficiently. So we looked at what it looks like from the outside. Well, this is a spinal x-ray. Actually, the cervical spine, to be more specific. You could see that there's that normal curve like I was talking about, that curve going backwards. That would be ideal, but over time, if we don't care for the spine, this is what starts to occur. The head starts to come forward, which almost every posture that I see that comes in the office does that. Then it starts to go in the wrong direction, and now you're curving in the wrong side. And then the body just starts to compress because gravity is just putting too much stress on it, and the discs and the vertebrae start to get smaller and smaller. And now, a person with a neck like that is unfortunately going to probably experience a lot of pain. They're going to experience a lot of other symptoms. You know, they could have chronic pain. They could also have headache. They can have, I mean, the sky's the limit on what the symptoms they can have. You know, and that's just one small thing about healthcare is looking at your posture. So what's the best kept secret? We talked about so many things today. Let's summarize it. The chiropractic lifestyle allows your body to do what it's meant to do, and that's heal. We can't forget about nutrition. Can't forget about what you put in your body. Our nervous system needs fuel to function correctly. Fuel comes from the glucose from the foods that we eat, as well as oxygen from the air that we breathe. That's how we get fuel to the nervous system. When you combine proper fuel and activation, which activation could be from chiropractic care, it could be from working out, it could be from a slew of different things, your body goes into a frenzy of self-healing, and only the human body really knows how much benefit you can get. So are you willing to test that? That's the question. So your choice to take part in the chiropractic lifestyle is a step in the right direction towards achieving a happier, healthier life for you and your family. Thank you so much for your attendance. And does anybody have any questions?
I do. I just have one question.
Yes,
Maybe
ma'am.
it can sound ridiculous, but when someone gets paralyzed, like in the spine, does everything compress and it becomes straight? Like what happens to somebody that, you know, like a Christopher Reeve, you know?
Like something like that, like something drastic like that, if you're paralyzed, you unfortunately severed the spinal cord. So anything from below that goes numb. So for instance, with Christopher Reeves, when he fell off the horse, he fractured his first vertebrae, and the vertebrae sliced his spinal cord. So everything from here down went numb, because there was no connection from that brain to the rest of the body. So for paralyzed people, that's more of a permanent severed damage to the spinal cord or the spinal nerve, you know. So that's more on the drastic side. There's less people that are paralyzed, and there's more people that are dealing with smaller things like this. And this is where the focus should be, rather than, you know, the people that are paralyzed, because that's probably 1% of the world, but 90% of the world needs to be healthier, and this is one of the biggest secrets to becoming healthier, is taking that stress off that nervous system.
But do the rest of the vertebrae degenerate
When?
still? Well, like the
Like
person,
if
a
you
paraplegic that is sitting in the chair like that for as long as they live,
Their
the
spine
rest of
is-
their
yeah.
bones, aren't they like
They're gonna-
degenerating?
yeah,
the
they're
rest
gonna
of the
degenerate.
vertebrae,
They're
even
sitting
though
their whole
they're-
life.
Yeah.
The seated posture is the worst posture for the lower spine. So yeah, that's going to start to compress the spine, and they're going to start to deform to that position.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
I want to ask, should you also be mindful of your posture? Should you say to yourself every day, you know, lift your rib cage, stretch your neck? Should you, besides
Yeah.
the chiropractic care, that's an
In
important.
a perfect world, that would be the most ideal thing to do. There's one small problem. Your postural muscles are subconscious. You can't control them. You could consciously control them temporarily. So I could say to myself, I'm going to stand straighter. But the minute I start to do something else, talk about something else, you just lose it. So they're unconscious. They're under control of what's called the cerebellum. So you can't physically say to yourself, stand up straight. You can temporarily, but not forever. So that's why you need to train the nervous system, train the cerebellum. And one of the biggest things for cerebellar activity is, you know, spinal adjustments. That's great for it. So that activates that nervous system, and then it'll change your posture. So yeah, it would be great to say every day I'm sitting up straight, but unfortunately you can't, because then you would never be able to do anything else. That will be on January 23rd, and we're going to be talking about the brain.
Okay.
You know, we talk about the nervous system as a whole as the brain and spinal cord. Well, if we were to think of the brain, your brain is your central control. That's your, that's your Houston. You know, when they say Houston, we have a problem, that's your Houston. And so we need to really understand what areas of the brain control what parts of you. And once you understand that, you can start to see some of the symptoms you have could be displayed based on certain changes in your brain function. And it's really powerful.